So just checking on things on our bus. My oil gauge went to 0, and this is what I came back to. So gotta figure out what the hell this is all about. Okay, so it's the next morning here. I was able to sleep off some of the stress from yesterday, although we handled it like a champ. The motor didn't blow up. And I'm getting ready to crawl underneath our bus to look and see at what could have possibly caused this oil explosion in our engine bay. I've already got a few good ideas, but I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna look around the bus and see how nasty it actually is. I've already cleaned up a lot of the oil off the back of it and the side. Let's go ahead and check it out. So here you can see, this is straight 40 weight, and I wiped a lot of it off yesterday, and just the dust has already started to coat everything again. My generator's completely covered, all of this, and it is a little windy, so I'm sorry, but I don't have a mic, but you can see the back is just completely covered. So we're gonna look at this and see what I can figure out. All right, there you can see, it's pretty nasty. So there's nothing really on the front of the engine, and normal leakage around the head, stuff like that is pretty common. There's a lot of compression in these motors. I've wiped a lot of this up, but you can see it's still pooling there. And I wiped a lot of it off. It was dripping from the ceiling. So like I was saying, it's just nasty. Lots of oil everywhere. It was it's still dripping off of there, and it's inside of this channel here everywhere. It's just kind of pooling up underneath. You can see it just running down. Probably need to get out of here because you're just going to be getting dripped on and then going there, lay on the couch. Get out here. Go back inside. Go get in that house. Get in that house. Look at that. That's a good boy right there. Get in that house. Whenever we put more oil in it yesterday, we noticed it was shooting straight up onto the underside of the engine. So that hose there, it was just on the other side shooting straight up. But you can see, it's still dripping back here. It's 10 hours later. So quite a nasty mess. It's on everything. It's dripping on my shoulders. So on a very positive note, at least I know where the leak is coming from. I just recently took out all of the AC condenser coil stuff here so I could put my generator inside of this bin and have some extra storage for tools and stuff. And of course, about 5 extra gallons of, straight 40 weight oil, which is, as you can see, necessary for these old Eagle buses being 2-strokes. Got my hat on to keep my head protected because I'm gonna get underneath here, and there's always sharp corners underneath these buses. So good tip when you're underneath any of these things, put a hat on because you're gonna hit your head on something. It's gonna hurt. Mm-hmm. All right, I got my headlamp on and
his hat.
My hat, check my dome, and I'm gonna get oily and greasy, but this helps a little bit. Here we go. Oh, I've got some towel stuffed in my pocket. Maybe they'll help out while I'm underneath there. You can come underneath there with me, Oscar? All right, here we go. Oh my gosh, what a nightmare.
God, my belly's still tiny. Oh, it looks beautiful under here, baby.
All right.
I can't see you anymore.
Cool. All right, I'm getting underneath here, and you can just see it's quite a disaster, but that's where I saw the oil shooting up from, is right over here. So I'm gonna crawl on the other side of this framing and get in this little cubby hole. I'll be on my knees mostly, which sucks. I do have an access panel right there. I did leave it in, however, I did glue and screwed it down just because I wanted it to be sealed. So I don't want to go through the process of busting it up if I'm gonna have to come down here anyways to clean stuff up. So I figured I'd just stay down here, leave it sealed up, and just deal with the problem down here. So I'm gonna crawl on the other side. Here we are. This is the Allison 747 transmission, just so you know where I'm at. This is super tight quarters. I'm on my knees in this little bitty space, but you can see how nasty it is. Here's my alternator. There is my air compressor, and it is just covered. So we're looking over all of this, and as you can see right there, that is the oil feed for my my alternator. Luckily, it's a compression fitting, and from the looks of things, I'm gonna be able to take that fitting off, follow this back to the other side there, and I'll just take the whole thing off. So that just goes up, over, and back down to this side. So this is the main line in, I'm guessing, and it just supplies oil to both sides. After I get this fixed, I'll come back here somehow, some way, spray degreaser on everything. So I've gotten the line off, and there's one on the back too, 7/16. And then I went ahead and took this front line right here off, and that I just did with a pair of pliers, and it connects down here on this other fitting. But I'm just gonna replace them. It's the only two oil lines going to this thing, so might as well just get it over with. Recently, I'll also add that this was my ground to my alternator, and I just recently updated that, and I put in a new 4/0 wire, and I ran it over to here where the original ground was, and I ground it down to fresh metal and everything just to help my ground issues out. Another thing I'll point out too while I'm under here is that I have a prime issue on my bus. This is probably going to be one of the main areas that I'm having that issue. And I think there's a check valve here or in the back of the block, but this hose is pretty loose at the fitting there, at least, and that is where I have, it was like that before this oil leak happened. So on my next go around, and hopefully I can do this before the bus explodes, but I'm gonna have to replace that entire hose. So I'll take that one out, but I'm gonna replace that one and the other main. So anyways, lots of work back here to do and clean up. Whew, that's bright. I'm out at Schaefer Farms. It's about 30 miles, I think, south, about 30 miles south. Oh, it's so bright. Anyways, about 30 miles south of Pampa, Texas. Not a huge selection here. I've got the hoses off, and there's a place called Parts in General, and I guess they're just a huge, oh, it's windy. I guess they're just a huge truck stop out there. I want to go somewhere that probably has more fittings and options. So, and it looks like there's a couple fittings that may not be like normal brass compression fittings. I'm sure they are, but I'm going to go ahead and that compression, that copper line that I have, I'm going to go ahead and replace that with just a normal hose so that there's some flexibility, and it's a little, you know, anything I can do to update the hosing, I'm going to do that. Got to get changed, get out of these yuck clothes, take you on a drive with me in the Jeep. It's pretty painful getting all this oil off the Jeep. We actually cleaned it off the same day that the accident happened. Wasn't easy. I ended up using about a half a quart of Dawn to clean a lot of this off, along with all the pre-soak that I'm using there. And even after it was shining, driving down the highway, a lot of the oil continued to seep out of the door handles and the window sills. So we'll be cleaning it up again. I'll probably end up doing the same thing to clean up the engine bay of the bus, you know, power washing it, degreasing it, and then using Dawn to try and break some of it down. It'll be fun. So next I take a little trip over to Parts in General. Basically this was the local truck shop that had all the equipment needed to build any kind of hydraulic hose or fuel hose or even oil hose. The only unfortunate thing is they did not have the fitting size for that little 1/8 inch copper line set that I needed. So they actually sent me over to Napa to try and get it there. But the cool thing is I was able to watch the guy build the hose that I needed for my bus. A lot of shops don't do that anymore. So Napa was able to help me out, and he just got me a new fitting on there, basically flared the new tip. So that wasn't too bad. About $65 later in combined parts. I will say I did want to get rid of this copper fitting just because it's already proven to be something that's not going to be as resilient as, you know, these braided lines I got. But no one has anything this small. And so if I was by a Home Depot or something, it'd probably be a lot easier to replicate this. But he bent this in straight, and I told him to leave it alone because I'm going to have to kind of bend this to get it to fit anyways. So I don't want to bend it and then get there and find out that this doesn't fit, and then I have to bend it back out, you know. So we're going to go see what we can come up with. I'm going to go back and see if this all works and just hustle to get it all on there, and hopefully all the leaks are gone. So as I was saying at Napa, the guy straightened this out and just put a new fitting on it, but the fitting was about, I'd say probably 3/16 of an inch longer than that fitting. So hopefully what he cut off, I'll be able to make up for with that fitting. The other thing too is whenever I took off this reusable fitting, I took this off of the alternator side. I went straight down to the very bottom and I was able to get the entire fitting off. However, on this side, I did not do that. I left the fitting on there. So we do not know what size the fitting is on the engine block side. More than likely both ends are the same, but if they're not, then I'm gonna be running back into town to get these parts. I'm gonna get this one on, and then I've already started it, but I bent this one a little bit to kind of round over the alternator, and then when I get this side mounted, I'll bend this one straight into where it needs to go. I really hate bending copper more than once, but I don't know, it was there for over 20 years, so hopefully it'll last. Maybe later on when I redo the fuel lines, I can redo this line too. But no one had these fittings in town, so they just reflared the end, and you know, I'll take it. This is the space I'm sitting in, basically on my knees. So I have to crawl underneath, and then that's the space I have to work on to get up there to the alternator. So here's that fitting I'm talking about. And so basically I've got to get that off and hope that that fitting screws on there. So it was actually pretty easy to get the fittings on. Once I got the other fitting off the engine block, the new hose and hydraulic line just fit directly onto the fitting that was still on the engine block. So it was very easy. With the copper line there, I was only able to keep it off of the end or off the alternator about 1/8 of an inch because of the angle there. But all in all, everything fit up pretty nice. So I only had to put a tiny bend in it right there at the end. And of course, here comes the fun part. Getting out from underneath there with all the oil and grease on me and all the dry grass, and then going and standing in the wind and shaking off like a wet dog. Probably the funnest part of the whole thing. So next here, I'm just putting in straight 40 weight oil. It is Rotella, however, a lot of people say to use Delo 100. But honestly, any straight 40 weight oil with a low ash will work. So I got the engine oil topped off, no leaks, just listen to her purr. So this next part was definitely a two-person job. I needed Jenny to actually start the engine for me, and I needed to be down inside the engine bay so I could see if the fittings were actually leaking or not. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead and start it up. So this was the first time I was actually in the engine bay area while the motor was running, but I wanted to be sure that the actual fittings weren't leaking. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hey, no one asked you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned. I've got more content coming with videos including a tour of our beautiful bus, our solar build, and just how we live our life being on the road, living full time in our bus. Don't forget to subscribe.